Hello students, today we are going to learn about different hand printing techniques like painting, stencil printing, block printing, spray painting and hand screen printing techniques. Coming to the objectives of the study, to obtain knowledge about hand printing techniques, to explore in detail about the techniques and strokes involved in painting, block printing and screen printing, and to acquire knowledge about the differences existed between different hand painting or printing techniques. Coming to the hand block printing, this is the oldest and simplest method of printing design on fabrics is hand block printing or block printing by hand. It was practiced by Chinese and Indians around 2000 years ago. Block printing is still practiced today as a handicraft because of its artistic and decorative value and because of its purity and richness of color produced by it. Each block prints only one color, and so if a design of several colors is desired, blocks must be made for each color separately. The blocks which are used for printing are made of wood or metal. The design to be printed is carved or raised on thick blocks of wood. So, in preparing a block, the design area remains raised while the background is carved away. Coming to the tools used for block printing, the blocks used in this method are made of several layers of common timber which are cemented together, and the portions to be printed are carved on a thick block of wood. Metallic blocks such as T-jabs are used for special work as in batik printing. Designs with fine lines which are too fine to be cut on a wooden block are made by inserting short pieces of copper strips or pins. For obtaining a overall design of colored dots, a block-like instrument containing 10 to 40 needles is used. Besides blocks, long tables and a number of sieves along with trolley are required to carry out printing techniques. The table is generally made of wood and is covered with a resilient pad of a wooden felt cloth of several layers and gunny cloth on which a black grey cloth is fixed. The procedure for block printing is as follows. The fabric is first laid flat on the table, then has been covered by several layers of protective padding material. The dye stuff is applied in the paste form to the design on the face of the block, or the roller is coated with paste or then rolled over the block, depositing a layer of color on the raised area. This block is pressed down firmly by hand on selected portions of the surface of the fabric, forcing the color into the surface. To obtain various of colors in the same design, as many additional blocks must be carved as there will be an additional color. The more color used, the more valuable and expensive the block print will be because of the enhanced beauty as well as the labor involved in the hand printing. Since the block has to be lifted and stamped on the cloth repeatedly, its size as well as the weight should not be excessive so that it can be manipulated easily. Each fresh portion of the cloth has to be printed by a separate application of the block, and the successive impressions have to be adjusted accurately to each other. Coming to the suitability of hand block prints, today fabric is block printed only in comparatively short lengths of material. Block printing is found chiefly in decorative pieces for the home or inexpensive linens for upholstery purpose. Coming to the merits of hand block printing, this method is simple to operate and does not require elaborate or expensive equipment. Design in any number of colors can be reproduced with ease and certainty by this method. Block printed fabrics possess richness, fullness and purity of color. no limiting factor in respect of size of repeat. The prints produced by this method are of great decorative value in general. Coming to the demerits, this method is slow and involves large amount of labor work. Printed fabrics cannot be produced inexpensively in large enough quantities by this hand block printing method. Due to the separate impression of the block, it becomes somewhat difficult to join up each impression or repeat perfectly. Very long or wide repeats cannot be printed by using large sized blocks of greater weight. Coming to the identification of hand block printed fabrics, hand block prints can be recognized by slight irregularities in the detail and in the repetition of the design and by comparing areas of slight variation in color. These irregularities are now limitation by machine printing. However, they give machine prints the characteristic appearance of expensive hand block prints. Coming to the next printing method, stencil and spray printing. Stencil printing was one of the oldest method of printing developed by Japanese. A stencil is prepared by cutting out a design from a flat sheet of cardboard or sheets of paper coated with oil, wax or varnish, or from thin sheets of metal. Stencils made from thin sheets of metal are costly and less easy to cut with accuracy and more difficult to handle than those made with cartridge paper and cardboard paper. Metal stencils are durable but liable to damage during working because of their thinness. The stencils may have a fine delicate designs or may be large spaces through which a great amount of color can be applied. The stencils must be planned so that they register a fit together properly to result in a perfect print. Usually, a separate stencil is cut for each color. A difficulty with stencil printing is that the design area must be connected properly to prevent parts of the stencil from falling out. To offset this problem, Japanese stencil artists developed a method of tying the various sections together with silk filament or human hair. Coming to the method of stencil printing, in actual practice, the stencil is laid perfectly flat on the fabric to be printed and the color paste is then brushed through its perforations with a brush. The plate is then lifted when the design appears on the required fabric. In patterns with 2 or more colors, a separate stencil is required for each color as in block printing. Every repeat can be colored differently if desired. The color can be brushed, dabbed with sponge or by means of spray gun through the stencil to obtain different effects. Different colors can be applied on different parts of stencil and then blended together with a sweep of brush before the stencil is removed. Coming to the application, this method is mainly confined to printing of wall hangings, decorative panels, curtains, bed sheets or bedspreads, table covers, cushion covers, etc. Any kind of color can be used for the pattern in this method, and oil colors are often used for heavy woolen goods, velvets, jute cloths and buckram, etc. Coming to the merits of stencil printing, this method is simple to operate and does not require elaborate or expensive equipment. Cost of the production is low and any kind of colors can be used in this type of printing, including oil colors and watercolors. The stencil plate can be cut rapidly with less cost when compared to the expenses of block cutting. A great variety of graded color effects can be obtained from one stencil by blending different colors. Coming to the demerits of stencil printing, designers' freedom is limited in designing the stencils, as unbroken lines or complete rings cannot be obtained by this method. The process involves manual work and is laborious. This method is not suitable for large scale production. This method is used for limited yardage, scarves and similar products. Coming to the fabric spray painting, it is a type of fabric painting in which the design may be hand painted on fabric or the dye may be applied with a mechanized airbrush which blows the spray color onto the fabric. When large areas of fabric have to be printed economically with less time, spray painting is adopted. In this technique, designs are imparted to fabric by spraying colors in a controlled manner through nozzle. Materials required for spray painting are spray guns, liquid fabric paints, stencils, fabrics that need to be painted. Coming to the procedure of spray painting, in actual practice, the stencil is laid perfectly flat on the fabric to be painted or printed and the color is applied with the spray gun. The stencil is then lifted when the design appears on the required fabric. Stencil has to be cut depending on the number of colors in the design. If the design requires 2 colors, 2 stencils need to be cut. Only one color is sprayed at a time. Coming to the next technique, screen printing technique. Newest technique for decorating fabrics and it is developed from stencil process. It is an improved method of stencil printing. Screen printing is a method whereby an open but closely meshed screens mounted in a wooden or metal frame is placed in contact with the fabric to be printed and the print paste is forced through the screens by a squeegee. Originally, this technique is referred to as silk screen printing because the screens were made of strong silk threads. Originally, flat screen printing is done by hand, but nowadays it is also done by machines. Coming to the procedure for making screens, there are 4 methods for making screens. The first method is direct printing method, second is Profilm method, the third is resist method and the fourth is photographic method. Out of 4 methods, photographic method discovered by Talbot is the most important and is widely used. Coming to the first method of making screens, that is direct painting method. In this method, silk screen is painted by hand with paint, blocking out those portions which are not required to be printed. This method is quite laborious. Coming to the second method, Profilm method. In this method, a profilm is placed over the design and the required motifs are cut out with a sharp knife so as to form a stencil. This stencil is placed on the silk screen and is ironed so that profilm gets fixed onto the screen and is ready for use. Coming to the third method, resist method. A suitable resist material is painted on the screen in the required design. It is allowed to dry and then the whole surface of the screen is coated with lacquer. After drying, the screen is washed with warm water, removing the resist material. Now, the screen is ready to use. Coming to the fourth method, photographic method. Today, the design is photographed and a negative is used for producing screens. This method requires considerable experience and skill and is very widely used. Silk blotting cloth stretches on the screen frame is coated with a sensitive solution of gelatin dichromate and is dried in the dark. The portion of the design depicting one color is drawn separately on a tracing paper, while the dense opaque black ink, which is called a positive, is placed in contact with the sensitized screen and is exposed to light for a short time. After exposure, the screen is washed with cold water and then with warm water to remove the soluble gelatin. Screen is dried and the layer of gelatin is reinforced by applying lacquer, which is resistant to acids, alkalis and organic solvents. There will be as many screens as the number of colors in the design. Coming to the preparation of screen printing table, hand screen printing is done commercially on long tables up to 60 yards in length. The fabric to be printed is spread smoothly on the table. The surface of the table is coated with light lac adhesive. The operators then moves the screen frames by hand successfully along the whole table. Coming to the design repeats, in screen printing, it is possible to have designs consisting of squares, circles and ovals because the area not to be received the die are painted out by lacquer. After the screen is completed, it is fastened to the frame. One screen for each color and the size is large enough to include at least one repeat patterns. Screen printing is desirable for the reproduction of large patterns. Coming to the process of screen printing, in printing, the fabric is spread flat on a padded table fastened securely in position. A screen representing one color of the design is set by hand over the fabric in the first position by metal brackets on the side of the table to hold it in place. The die is placed at the edge of the frame and a rubber knife or squeegee moves the die across the screen and forces the color onto the fabric through the design. This is repeated as many times as necessary to print the fabric completely. This process must be repeated for each color to be used in the design. Hand screen printing is time consuming and limited to relatively short lengths of 60 yards. Electronically controlled automatic machines can screen print long lengths of cloth at rates of up to 450 yards per hour. In this method, the back of the fabric to be printed is coated with an adhesive which causes it to adhere to the backing on a rubber conveyor belt that serves as a tabletop for printing. A series of flat screens, one for each color, are set in frames with automatically operated squeegees and are placed above the belt. After printing, the cloth is continuously fed into an oven to be dried. All types of fabric structures including wovens, knits and non-wovens can be flatbed screen printed. Coming to the characteristics, this technique is the most common form of textile printing and it involves the application of printing paste through a fine screen placed in contact with the fabric to be printed. Coming to the merits of screen printing, the color can be produced in brighter, cleaner shades than that of roller printing. Designs to be repeated can be much larger and method is simple to operate and does not require elaborate and expensive equipment. Method enables new patterns to be produced and blotch designs can be printed through this method. As many as all colors can be printed in one pattern by this method and prints obtained by this method are more intense, more bright, sharp line effects including vertical lines can be produced by this method. Coming to the demerits of screen printing, for higher production, a large number of tables have to be used requiring huge spaces. Delicate shades and gradation of colors are difficult to obtain by this method. The process is slower than the machine roller printing. Coming to the identification of screen printed fabrics. Flatbed screen prints do not have the fine line details that is possible with roller printing and rotary screen printing. Coming to the fabric painting. Fabric painting is a great way to add new life to plain old t-shirts and boring upholstery or any bland fabrics that need a boost. A number of fabric painting tools are available in the market like fabric painting tubes, fabric painting pens, paint pots and brushes. Depending on the materials, different types of fabric paints are used. For example, liquid paints are suitable for silks. Fabrics suitable for fabric painting are cotton, cotton polyester blends, woven, knitted, felt, terry cloth, silk, velvets, velveteen, corduroy, flannels, suede, leather and most synthetics. These all are the suitable materials for painting. Coming to the material required for fabric painting are cloth or fabric which is 100% cotton is the best for fabric painting, and fabric paints which are Fevicryl and brushes of different numbers and different sizes and a frame, palette, white tracing paper, design, pencil, water and waste cloth. The fabric painting can be done in two ways, like the first method is by fabric painting by freehand, which is made by painting with freehand without any design on fabric. Fabric painting by tracing the design with the help of the transfer paper is the second type. The fabric which has to be fabric painted has to be washed and ironed first. Before starting, make sure that the fabric is smooth without any creases. After tracing the design onto the fabric, using tracing carbon or white carbon, paint is applied on the fabric. Color combination plays an important role in painting, and fabric painting with paint brushes allow the painter to alter the color of the paint by mixing two or more colors before adhering the color to the fabric. The paint brushes has to be chosen according to the effect one needed with the brush stroke. In order to paint clean lines and to fill large spaces, flat shader brushes are suitable as they have a chiseled edge. Liner brushes are long or short tapered and are ideal for making long brush strokes. Scrubber brushes are composed of tapered bristles, which are perfect for blending colors and creating short, rough strokes. Only one color is applied at a time, and the painting should always be started with lighter color first, followed by the darker colors. Make sure that the paint is traced exactly on the transfer paper so that the pencil lines or transferred lines won't be visible after painting. One need to wait till the first color dries and proceed into the another color. While painting, for example, if a rose flower has to be painted on the fabric, the inside petals has to be painted first with lighter shades, followed by the outer side petals with darker shades. After finishing with painting, the painted fabric has to be allowed for drying for at least for few hours so that the color can be set thoroughly. After allowing the painted sample to dry for 24 to 72 hours, the fabric has to be ironed from backside to allow the color to be permanently fixed onto the fabric. Today we have learned about different types of hand printing methods like painting, stencil printing, block printing, spray printing and hand screen printing. Thank you.